Thank you all for coming, participants and audience. I'll just do really briefly. Who do we have here? Selena Chambers is here. How's it going, Selena?
Hey, good. How's it going with you?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So what you been up to?
Um, Writing, like I think we've
Hmm.
all been up to. Um, I've been working on a long story, the same one that I sent to you for this anthology, before the one that actually got into the anthology. So,
And music journalist. Tell the people about that.
music
That
journalist.
the book you wrote.
The book I wrote? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's kind of journalism. Yeah.
So let me just start over. So my name's Selena Chambers. Um, and I'm the author of Babes in Toyland's Fontanelle, which is part of the 33 and a third series from Bloomsbury. And hopefully we'll get to dig into it more tonight. But Babes in Toyland is a seminal 90s all-girl band that kind of pioneered what became the Riot Girl movement. So I got to write the only book that has been written about them in like 30 years. So that's been a big part of my life.
Next up in the alphabet, Libby Cudmore. What's up, Libby? How are you?
Hi there. Wow. Oh, okay.
No, you're. We can hear
Okay,
you.
good. So,
You wrote a book. You wrote a book too. Do
what
you
was that?
remember? Do you remember writing a book?
Yes, it
Yes. Tell
seems
us
so
about it.
long ago. It came out a year ago today.
All right. And it's
Wow.
called Negative Girl, and
Yes,
it's
so
a
named for a
crime
Steely Dan
novel.
song. Yes. The first novel in the Wade and Jack's story series, which have been in Ellery Queen and Tough. I've got a Seamus for one of them. I got a Black Orchid for another. So they've been out and about.
These are prizes, not actual items.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wish. Oh.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, happy to be here. This was such a fun anthology.
He's done with his beer, so we can talk to Michael Marano.
Am I next in the alphabet?
Yeah, amazingly, there's nothing between C's and M's in this
Oh
time.
my gosh. Okay. Well, I'm conveniently positioned in the dead center of the alphabet, so I'll just accept this honor. My name is Michael Marano. I'm a horror author, film critic, a member of the Boston Society of Film Critics, uh, and do all kinds of things. I was a punk rock DJ. Who else here was a DJ? We had so many. Okay, Molly.
Sort
Okay,
of.
sort of. Yeah. College radio, man.
Right.
And that started my career as a radio commentator, and I was a radio commentator on public radio from 1990 to 2002, covering movies. Worked for the Sci-Fi Channel, a bunch of other venues, and I got the International Horror Guild and Bram Stoker Awards for my fiction. And I've been living in this crummy apartment for 20 years in Somerville, a famously crappy neighborhood in the Boston area. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm wearing a hoodie that I had back in the 80s. And this is the punk rock jacket, the punk rock vest. It was a jacket before I had to cut off the sleeves that I've had since about 78 or 79, and it still fits.
And
So,
it's definitely not a joke that you just made up for us now. That is something that you've had since the 70s.
yes, that is something.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Who's next? Jason Ridler. Got any outfits for us?
Nothing that can compete with that. I mean, I have like a flannel shirt from the late 1980s and sleeveless too, but no one's buying tickets to that gun show, so I'm going to keep that off stage. Um, Good to be with you. But my day job is I'm a military historian at Johns Hopkins University. I'm a creative writing teacher for the arts at Google. That sounds made up, but I swear to God it's true. And I was thrilled to be in this anthology, so it's good to be with you all.
And you've got a book coming out.
Yes, to be coming out this 2026 from the good folks at Shotgun Honey. So if you like the kind of stories that are in 120 Murders, you're really going to like what I cannot name yet, but will be the best professional wrestling crime novel set in 1983 Minnesota that you haven't read yet.
That's right. Brian Slattery. Is
Okay.
that beard new?
Say that again.
Is the beard new?
No. The white is new.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Yep.
So what's
Um,
going on? You're a banjo celebrity and a writer.
yeah, so I'm a journalist, musician, and write fiction, science fiction mostly, sometimes crime, which is why I'm here. Uh, and yeah, I guess as a journalist, I just already ran out of words. But yeah, the whole music, the whole music writing connection is a little strong around here.
Absolutely. I remember my friend Jeffrey telling me, my late friend Jeffrey, who a few of us knew, telling me, oh, Brian's the kind of guy who can find 10 people who are not musical, hand them instruments, and in 20 minutes teach them a song, and it'll be professional level.
Oh, wow.
Was it crazy?
That's quite a compliment.
Or is it true?
I don't
Oh,
know.
it's true.
I don't
It is.
know. I don't
You
know.
just say no, it's true. Okay. Next up, Molly Tanzer also has a book coming out in 2026, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I do. I have a novella through Tor.com coming out. It is called And Side by Side They Wander, and it is an intergalactic art heist and comedy of errors. I'm a writer, and I do some short fiction, and yeah, I don't know.
And
And I was a DJ. I was in my college. I was a college radio DJ, which features heavily in the story that I wrote for this anthology,
Right.
which is based around many partially true events that happened at my college. So,
but not the murder, surely.
not the murder, not the murder.
Then no statute of limitations, so it definitely was not the murder that
It
way.
was not the murder. Other stuff, we'll see if we get into it.
And definitely not least, but sadly last, is the way the alphabet goes, Chris Terry. Welcome.
Hi.
When I asked you to come, be part of this, I thought, he's on the West Coast like me. It'll be easy for him.
This I appreciate that you know that I like to go to bed at like 9 o'clock.
That's right.
But I'm doing okay. Yeah, I just moved to Baltimore, Maryland from Los Angeles, California. I'm a creative writing professor. Currently working on my third novel, which is like a haunted house possession type of story. My most recent book is an anthology that I co-edited with my friend James Spooner. It's called Black Punk Now, and it's like fiction and nonfiction and comics, all by and about Black punk rockers. I grew up playing in like punk and hardcore bands in the 90s and early
What did you
2000s.
play?
I was the vocalist. I can play other instruments too, but the bands that did the most, I was just shouting up front.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've got, I've always been a music lover, and alternative music and punk are very close to my heart. And I was pulling from some of my own, low rent group living situation experience for my story in 120 Murders.
All right. So we got questions from the crowd. So I figured we can just roll through these and people can answer them. I'll answer the first one because it just makes me so sad because I'm so old. And maybe I should just kill myself rather than read this question. Why 120 was question number one, as in 120 murders. And I'll tell you, without getting inside of a legal tangle, once upon a time, late at night on a certain cable network that has its own publishing imprint and is owned by a giant conglomerate that is extremely litigious, had a show that was 2 hours long. And that show was named after the fact that it was 2 hours long. And by sheer cosmic coincidence, I came up with the number 120 and a word beginning with the letter M for 120 Murders. Did we all watch that show?
A lot.
Don't nod, you're on TV, you have to talk.
Well, was it
So why
every
you loved it?
I probably probably caught it when my older sister watched it, but I was never like, oh, it's on, time to watch. I was much more of a VH1 girl, honestly.
Why not?
My parents are hippies, and we didn't have cable.
Oh.
So I was reading books. Okay, yeah.
I watched it religiously, trying to find off-kilter things that I could play on my radio show on WBNY in Buffalo, because I had come back to Buffalo, my hometown, after going to school in Boston at BU and then crashing and burning in graduate school at Brown University. So I came back and I was teaching at Buffalo State College and would religiously watch that 120 show and find nuggets, and I would actually tape it. I would actually tape it to
Me too.
find the bands I could find. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a VHS of various performances and stuff.
Oh, that's so cool.
The commercials?
If I fell asleep, probably, but if I was awake, I would.
Hit pause. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to suffer
Canada,
through
Jason,
the
did this-
Canadian
you know what we're talking
equivalent of
about?
that. Who did the what now?
Since you're from Canada, do you know what we're talking about?
No, what it's strangeness and bizarre to me. I only knew about that television show channel that only did music with videos, and Canada has its equivalent called Much Music, which is a lazy title. And I believe there was an equivalent of that which we cannot speak of that happened late at night, and was it was my gateway drug to catching a old REM video or a replacements video or local bands in Toronto where I was from. So you were into the indie scene, and I was in a punk band too at the time. So that was how we found out about bands who were our competition.
Competition.
Yeah.
Did Much
Mad
Music
Canadian dollars.
Did Much Music have a rule?
Wait a minute, Jason. What bands were you in Toronto?
None of consequence, but if you need to know, the band that I was most associated with was called Ragweed, whose members then went on to become Cat Rocket. Yes, that Cat Rocket. I'm sure you're all stunned.
Yeah. I mean, I can't count how many times I saw the Forgotten Rebels out of Hamilton.
Oh yeah, they were one of my favorite bands to see live because didn't matter how few people were in the audience, they were entertaining.
Yeah, and let's not forget a bunch of goofs fucking off.
My mother was friends with them.
No
in
way.
Kensington Market
The
in
band or the
downtown
Goofs?
Toronto. Just Steve. Like, she's like, do you know who this guy is? And like, why are you talking to him? He's like, well, we got cheese at the same place and he needed a smoke. And I'm like, okay, just be wary if he's armed with a chainsaw, you'll know why. But yeah, hand to
Chris
God.
had a question or comment? You had your hand up, Chris?
Oh, I wanted to ask, did Much Music have a rule that they had to play a certain percentage of Canadian music? I remember watching
33.3% Canadian content was mandated by law. And so, which is why we see all these amazing American videos and then something like a clown in a bubble with a xylophone from Quebec.
Or the hip.
What is? And the hip, okay. And Rush. There's some people that did some heavy lifting like Rush. But actually it was good because otherwise there would be no fighting chance for a Canadian, especially an independent musician, of having any chance of getting airplay or radio play or any of those. So yeah. I was for it.
That 33 1/3% rule was why the Beachcombers was on for 40 years.
You learn a lot of things in Buffalo, New York. That sounds good. But we have Molly Tanzer, who's the Canadian of America because she's a millennial. Do you know what we're talking about?
Yes.
Hey, I am too.
Yeah, there's a bunch of millennials on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I used to catch it, but if I was watching that certain network, it was usually for the cartoons. So I got into the music a little bit later because Eon Flex had all of my attention, as did the Max.
Yeah, same. I mean, I was just so lucky because I had a cool older sister.
Yeah.
And so
I did not. I am an only child who grew up in a very sheltered, classical music oriented household. So I came to rock and roll a little bit later than many did.
All right. Here's the next question. outside of writing, what do you enjoy creating? I don't even enjoy writing. That's what an absurd question. But anybody else? We have musicians, several musicians. Brian Slattery is a good musician, and there are other musicians as well. So
I was
tell us
actually
about
going
your-
to say my answer to that question would have been food. It's
Yeah, cooking's a creative process and it pays off right away. You can't say
it
that.
really does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I put a lot of focus into how I dress, and I always do up like pinup makeup and funky hairdos. And then lately a lot of house creativity. Like I'm redoing my upstairs guest room into like a boudoir. So I'm doing a lot of rearranging. So that's really my creative outlet is and it also just listening to music and sort of thinking about it. I got my record collection back here. That's part of it.
Well, Chris, your story involves cooking, and it involves one of the grossest recipes I've ever heard. Eating off one of the grossest plates I've ever even contemplated. Is that a true story?
It says fiction on the spine. I'll say that much. But yeah, one of my first like things I figured out how to cook when I moved out. I moved out pretty young and had to eat off of $20 a week. And I was like, I'm gonna get a can of sloppy Joe mix, and I'm a vegetarian, so I'm just gonna put beans in it. And then I'd also like saute peppers and onions, which was a real gourmet move when I was 18. You know, I put it over pasta, over ziti. Honestly, I need it again, I think.
It sounds okay. It sounds
Yeah.
okay.
Sounds
Yeah.
totally fine.
Yeah,
don't eat
does.
it off a pizza box like in my story. I think that kind of that adds another layer.
But in
Yeah.
those days, just making pasta and sauce out of a jar was a culinary victory. So
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yep. You're like, I didn't eat cereal. I did it. Good job. I'm basically could be on Iron Chef right now.
So, Brian, tell us about your musical background.
Oh, geez. The short answer is that these days it's jazz at home and Appalachian music when I leave. That's the that's the general stick. But it came. I was like one of those tiny child who wanted to play the violin when I was 4, and it's stringed instruments. I think it's a little bit like accumulating like dialects of English. It's not as impressive as it seems. But
So, have you been to Appalachia?
a lot
Oh, yeah.
now.
For
Yeah.
musical reasons?
Yeah, like I mean, first musical, increasingly social, as you get to know people. And there's like there's a bunch of oh yeah. I mean there's a bunch of music festivals that I go to, as in like people get together and play.
Mhm.
And there's one in particular that I think everyone should experience at some point in their lives, because you go to a hilltop in West Virginia for 11 days and everyone sets up extremely elaborate campsites, and that's all you do is play and eat and barely sleep.
What's it called?
It's called Cliff Top, and it's pretty special. Yeah. Appalachia has a serious pull. It's a beautiful and often misunderstood place.
Wonderful. This leads to our next question, which is will you be at any book genre conventions in the future? Which is mostly an Assassin's question, honestly. But we know that Brian will be at this West Virginia thing. How about anybody else? Before the end of the year, going anywhere special that we can find you at? You have to hunt us down on Zoom? Good.
I'll be in Oklahoma City in October.
Oh.
So,
Which
which is where,
7-Eleven?
what?
Which 7-Eleven will you be at?
The one on oh God, what is it? There's one up on Penn. I like the one on Britain. It's really sketchy. It's old school.
I made a bad editorial note on Libby's story about 7-Eleven. I looked
Yes.
up what they were calling the drinks at the time. So this was not the name of the official 7-Eleven drink. And she said in Oklahoma it was.
Yes.
And I looked it up and she was right.
Yep. I get corrected on that a lot because a lot of my fiction does take place in Oklahoma, which is where I'm from, where my mom's side of the family is. And people always correct me on 7-Eleven and saying it's Slurpees. No, in Oklahoma, it is an icy drink. That's like my that's where I get really like, well, actually, like I've got my answer prepared. I have like I took photos the last time I was there, so that if people are like, no, I'm like, no, it's this. I get very bossy about my Dr. Pepper ices. Like,
True.
that's one thing.
I
You're the
never show up for a convention until I know I have enough money and time to go. Like I never plan. Like I'll say, "Oh, this is coming next week." Yeah. So I have no idea what the next convention I'll be at will be. So
I keep joking. I kind of want to crash AWP
Hmm.
since it's what, in Baltimore next year.
It is.
So I've got a lot of friends from Barrel House that go, and I don't actually want to go because I don't want to learn how to make a chapbook out of a tea bag and a tampon, which is an actual thing I witnessed in Denver. I just want to go to the book room and see my friends. Like, I don't care about ekphractic poetry. I just don't. Like, but there is the book fair.
But surely you care about ekphractic prose, because that's our next question.
Yes.
Have you written stories based on music before? And if not, did you find it more challenging than other work you've done? Selena, we've not heard from you in a second.
Yeah. Well, so with the exception of the nonfiction book, which I'll come back to, I do write about music a lot, but not necessarily from like the experience of a musician, but just the immersion of a listener. It's more about atmosphere in my fiction than anything else. But for the nonfiction, for the Babes book, it was really hard because I realized how much responsibility when your heroes are still alive and their story hasn't been very well told in the past, how much responsibility you end up carrying to try to soldier through that hero worship and actually tell the real story, whether they agree with you or not.
So would you say they agreed with you about 33 and 30% of the time, or?
Yeah,
Nick.
I'd say that's accurate. Yeah, no, actually they ended up, I heard from two of the band members and they gave me the approval. They approved of my take. So that was nice.
That's 2 out of 4, right?
2 out of 3.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's even better. That's a great record. That's fantastic. That's a good percentage.
3 out of 4. You're right. No,
Oh, 3 out of 4. Okay. Yeah,
my odds are better than I thought.
I don't think they were a power trio.
Yeah.
How about you, Molly? Read about music before or inspired by music before?
Not yes and no. It often appears in my work, but I'm really more of a visual arts person. I'm more sort of comfortable in that milieu. So this was actually kind of exciting because it as an opportunity because I don't often do that. I do like to listen to music and I do listen to music. But I often can't while I'm working, and so sometimes it doesn't bleed into it in the same way that like literature I'm reading or like museum things that I'm seeing like find their way into my work as much. So it is fun to stretch. It was fun to stretch my wings and talk more about music than other forms of art.
And your story, The Best in Basement Radio, was pretty singular in that someone's literally playing that particular song for a certain reason, which has to do with the length of the song. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think there was another question about like, did you have a backup song? And I don't mean to jump the gun, but
jump the gun. That's okay.
I did need a long song, and so the Weezer song "Only in Dreams" at the end of the Blue album, which is amazing and long, was the one I wanted to write about. But I did have Blue Monday in mind if it ended up not being like appropriate for the anthology, because there is indeed an event that takes place where a DJ who has the 5 to 7 a.m. show on WPRK, which was and still is the radio station out of Rollins College in Central Florida, and needs that amount of time to go and do a thing and then come back. And because she knows the song so well, she can use it in her head as like a timer for getting back there and back again, but things go very wrong in that. So that was really fun.
That was really fun. That was a really fun story.
Oh, thank you.
We should all get by if you haven't bought it yet. But
For
also,
story-
the next question. Yes, go
Oh,
ahead, Mike.
first story I ever wrote was based on Mozart's Requiem,
Oh,
first
cool.
story I ever published. And I actually tried to break it up into the same movements, but failed. But and then I wrote a short story, which is really bad, and I never even sent it out, based on If Only from the Breaking Glass soundtrack by Hazel O'Connor. The opening's good. The opening of the story is good. The rest is shit. Maybe some.
Unlike your story on 120 Murders, which is all good from top to bottom.
Well, thank you. And that story was not written for this anthology. I had written it before, and then when Nick announced the anthology, I said, okay, why Nick created the anthology specifically for my story.
That seems like something Nick would do.
Yeah, clearly. But my story is so specifically about Kenmore Square in Boston, and it's so specifically about this song that became associated with Kenmore Square in Boston. And I couldn't possibly think of another song that could work for what I wanted to say, because also I was mourning not only the life that existed there in Kenmore Square in Boston back in the day, I was mourning a friend of mine who was in a very abusive marriage, and I was certain she was going to die. She did not. And then, irony of ironies, when I was revising the story, another friend of mine was in a monstrously abusive relationship, and I was sure she was going to die. They both came out of it, but those looming deaths, it became an act of preemptive mourning for two people who thankfully did not die.
Oh, wonderful. And
Jeez.
that's the nature of dark fiction. It's
Yeah.
also the nature of anthologies that sometimes you ask people and sometimes you take queries. I always believe in taking queries after I announce something because you never know what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Especially everybody here. We got a good story from Jeff Ford, who's an older writer, and he wrote a wonderful story. And then I said, so what song is this based on? He's like, what are you talking about? So I gave him 3 choices, and he picked one. So if you run into Jeff Ford, you can quiz him about Black Flag, and he'll know nothing about it.
That's funny.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's already forgotten the name of the band that I've assigned to him. But the question comes up, if you couldn't do the song you wanted, because I did have to, when I asked people, I asked them in advance what song, or at least what band you wanted. We got a bunch of Depeche Mode. Brian ended up having the Depeche Mode. We got a couple of REMs. One guy got REM. If you couldn't get the one you wanted, what would you have chosen instead?
I actually worked backwards on this one because I had originally planned to do, I think it was Zoot Suit Riot, or no, it was Brown Derby Jump by the Cherry Poppin' Daddies. And I just I couldn't, it wasn't working. And I think at the absolute last minute, I think I started writing Tornado Mother sort of even before I got that phrase in my head, and then thought, oh, I'll set it to Tallulah. And I was looking to see if Tallulah was on the list, please, because the original genesis of this story I've had forever, and it was loosely based on Tori Amos's song Drive All Night.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of had the characters, but I never finished that story. It really didn't have anything beyond the opening scene. And so I was in Oklahoma taking care of a family member, and so I worked backwards there.
How about Chris and/or Jason?
I was going to do a replacement song, Do or Die. So if I couldn't have gotten Little Mascara, I would have done, I think it was Kids Don't Follow. In part because that song, kids, rebellion, but it was one of those great songs by that band where it's you could see all the cool stuff that was coming in the future is kind of encapsulated there. And I'd been thinking a lot about how some musicians, I think Jason Heller used this comment in some piece he wrote, one of the 2 billion he's written on music, about creating a sound world. Some bands can do this. The Fall has an entire world within the kind of music that Tom Waits does. And I thought that would have been a good song to say, like, okay, if that's true, are the Replacements a band that has kind of like a universe within it? And I think it does.
I
And
second
I
that.
managed, and I think I tapped into some of that with Little Mascara, which was didn't have the same sort of thematic route, but I was still reaching for that kind of song, that kind of scene. Oh, and one person who does this with music well, and Nick, you'll probably, I hope you know the name of the short story. Gary Braunbeck did that with Quadrophenia, using the
yeah.
principles of how that musical is orchestrated to write a song about being in the world's worst line at a prog rock concert. And it is an ugly piece of business about when you lose someone in a concert and you never know if you're going to see them again.
Mm.
So
Well, I love Gary Braunbeck, but you know, the two things I hate worst in all of the world is waiting in a long line and prog rock. So I skipped that one. I don't know
Yeah.
take your word for it, Ridley.
They
There's
have
a-
some things in common, actually, now that I think about it. Whole waiting in a line in prog rock.
Oh
There's-
man.
Yeah, there's a lot of
There's-
music in Gary's work. He
Yeah.
threads it through, and he's pretty good. But
I-
if I couldn't choose the specific song that I used, I might have used the title of the album from which it came, because the whole album is about just how weird Kenmore Square and the Fenway areas were in those days. Just how completely unreal everything was.
Chris?
I was thinking about some of the like weirder Black Top 40 music that was popular around 1990. You know, your Soul to Soul, your PM Dawn, and looking to see if any of that might apply to the story. And I got really stuck on these PM Dawn lyrics. And then I realized that it didn't fit the parameters entirely for the anthology that we're doing, because the video wasn't played in this context. And then I also found out that the lyrics I was really stuck on were actually Joni Mitchell lyrics that they were quoting. So I was like, oh, okay. Hip hop is samples in a lot of ways, and that's not working here. So I'm going to think really literally about Time Bomb by Rancid and write a story. What would happen if a boy was a time bomb? I initially wanted it to be like if The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe took place in a punk house, but then it kind of started taking on other stuff as I was including details about you're just thinking about different like shitty roommates you might have in one of these situations. And my wife's an old punk rocker also, so I'm like bouncing ideas off of her, and she's like, "Ooh, what about this? What about this other thing you told me? What about this guy?" You know, and there is like this, you know, shadow document of my story that's pretty much just like horrible roommate anecdotes from a quarter of a century ago. So we went from Set Adrift on Memory Bliss to the guy who who threw up in the tub and tried to clean it up with toilet paper. That's
Right.
just how it goes. Yeah.
So here's one for the more mystery themed writers. For those who don't know, 120 Murders started out conceptualized as a crime fiction anthology. But when we moved to Ruadán Books, we expanded it to dark fiction in general. So we have science fiction and horror and gothic and inexplicable stuff. But for the people who wrote mysteries, here's a question for you. As a writer who knows the end of your mystery, in quotes, what steps do you take to make it secret to the reader? Personally, I always write crime fiction, so it's not about who did it. Usually what happens is it happens in the first couple of paragraphs and just people respond to it. So I think Molly wrote you did. There's a mystery. How to keep the end secret.
Is there a mystery?
Yes.
I guess I thought about it more as a crime story. So I feel unprepared to answer this. I often wonder how people write mysteries because I'm always blown away by them. I'm like, I would never, it's so amazing, but I also never know who did it in movies. I'm just very gullible like that. So I don't know. I think I mean with that story, I guess I worked backwards from the ending, but then it sort of grew beyond the brief. But my story, when you asked me about this, I was told crime fiction, and so there's no speculative element in my story, so I had to come up with something. And I don't know. Sorry, I'm very unprepared to answer this. I don't know how to write a mystery. It's amazing. If someone can tell me in the comments
We
or
got
on
Libby
the Zoom,
here.
I'll very much
She's a
appreciate
professional
it.
mystery writer. She's been in Alfred Hitchcock and other Queen magazines.
Yeah.
So tell us how to do it, Libby.
Yeah, please.
I wish I knew, because I generally, I always start with characters, and this happened in The Big Rewind, and it happened in Negative Girl, where I won't know who the killer is until the very end, and then I go back and seed all that back in. But with this one, I didn't know there was going to be a mystery at first, and as I wrote it, the mystery sort of revealed itself. So I had to then go back in and seed. So I always know that a crime has been committed, and I'm with the sleuth. So I never know what is happening. Only I have the benefit of being able to go backwards.
I will say Ian Rankin, the Scottish crime writer, says the same exact thing. He doesn't know how the story's going to go. He writes it to find out who did it as well. So it seems fairly common. So to answer the question, we don't take any steps. We take no steps to keep the secret from the reader, because it's a secret to us. It seems to be what I'm hearing. All
yes,
right.
I'd say so.
Anybody else got a notion for, I guess, would-be writer? How to keep it secret to the reader?
Trying to figure this out now. I'm trying to write a sort of mystery crime story, and I'm trying to think of it as like breadcrumbs, where I'm just kind of giving them little hints and giving the characters stuff to go off of, until the result feels maybe a little bit undeniable. I also think, you might not. I like hearing from the other writers here that like you don't always know everything, and sometimes you write to find out. I think trusting the process is good. I think also you can overwrite in those early drafts, and then you can kind of pull stuff out and share it later. You can be withholding. A story is always going to be like that tip of the iceberg thing, where there's all the stuff that the writer knows under the surface that might not make it onto the page, at least immediately.
I never believed the stories about Raymond Chandler not knowing who the killer was until the ending. But recently I wrote, it's a horror story, but it's very crime adjacent. And it's so different from anything I've written. I've written the first draft and I'm revising it now. But it's so different from anything I've ever produced, I might try to sell it under a pseudonym. But I was writing the penultimate chapter and I was intending the killer to be like the Zodiac. He just sort of goes into the mist. He just turns into smoke. No one knows who he is. I was writing the penultimate chapter of the first draft, and I said, "Oh my God, this guy did it! Holy shit! He could have stolen that guy's car and left those tire tracks, and he could have cloned that guy's phone and used that cell tower, and it just retroactively turned into that guy did it." And then I said, "Holy shit, Chandler was right. Sometimes you don't know who did it." So,
he was the man.
he was the man. And it turns out Bruce Willis was dead the whole time.
Whoa.
I
Dude,
did have a
spoiler.
similar experience with my novel, I Am Providence, which I think is the most straightforward crime novel I've written, despite having a supernatural element. And the initial ending was going to be sort of like Orient Express style ending. But when I realized I was only 45,000 words in and I needed another 15 at least, and two, it wasn't satisfying. And then so I realized, oh, actually somebody else could have done it who wasn't in the book. He was mentioned by other people, but he did not appear in the book at all. And so I had to go back and make some changes and then introduce this character who's also barely in the book still, but is all over. He's always around the corner or talked about how he used to come to this event that where the book is set. And then it became a real fair play mystery, but only after the fact. And I think this is true like a lot of things that people experience. I was talking just the other day about Rene Descartes, who wrote incredible works of philosophy, boiling down logic and reason and working from first principles. But one of his major works starts with a prologue that is rarely reprinted in English, where it starts with, "This all came from a dream I had." So even the people who are the core of rational thinking in Western civilization start with, "Oh yeah, I woke up and I had this idea in my head, and now I'm retroactively creating a logical framework for it."
Did you
So I
just
hope that helps. It
accuse
probably doesn't.
Descartes of being vibes, Nick?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's vibes. That's
Oh,
right.
okay. Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
Descartes vibes. Here's a weird question. I don't understand this question. So we're going to go to Selena first. Who gets to define your writing?
No one and everyone.
Ah,
Yeah. I'm a very fastidious plotter, and I'm very intentional in my structure and everything, but there's nothing I can do once it's left my plate to convince anyone that I've done any of that stuff. So whatever the reader gets out of it, that's out of my control. So that's why I say no one and everyone.
Yeah, I think it's good to know what you want to do, but you have to, that's part of saying goodbye to your work. My first book, it's a YA book, and it was set in 20 years in the past, and one of the trades listed it as historical fiction, which really made me feel my age because it was like based on the era when I was in middle school.
Right? Yeah.
I also think there's no problem saying, no, the reader's wrong. I think there are times where you just have to say this. And I say this because when I did the Brimstone Files many moons ago, I was in this interesting spot where I was like, oh, this is just liberal nonsense. This can blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, you're both wrong. You're both wrong. You don't get it. And I'm as right as they are, if not more so, because at least I did the homework to make it as good as it could be. Are they allowed to have their own experiences, interpretations? But of course, as everyone else is saying, that's the deal. Once it's released into the public sphere, the commonweal gets a vote. But there's just times when they're wrong, and it's not a problem saying that too.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I'm not allowing for the instances when people are willfully decontextualizing the work. There's a difference between like a reader's personal response that may have nothing to do with the writer's intention and a reader who is trying to manipulate and corrupt the text to fit their own definition for some other reason. That's when I would say they're wrong.
I suspect this question came because of like a really exciting skeet that happened on Blue Sky with Premi Mohammed, went a little viral in the science fiction community, giving a presentation where she had a slide that said, "What is science fiction?" And it was like, "I don't know. It doesn't matter. That's marketing's job. Like, who cares?" And I really enjoyed that, and I'm wondering if that question came from that, because there is a lot of talk, especially in genre fiction, about like, is this science fiction? Is this science fantasy? Recently, I have been working with the estate of C.L. Moore to bring back Jurel of Jory, who's a sword and sorcery, the first lady sword and sorcery heroine, and it is unbelievable what people argue about in terms of, is it sword and sorcery? And so I do think it's a delight to readers to sort of try to categorize. And speaking of the Western mind, like we love to create categories and things, but I do think these sorts of categories are incredibly artificial and modern. And really, you're just trying to, I mean, what is this? It's where your would be shelved in the bookstore ultimately. And as long as people aren't constantly telling women writers that they write YA, I just like to be in the bookstore. But that does kind of happen a lot with women writers. So in terms of that, I would say I get to define, is this young adult, which my work has been called, and I'm like, did you read that scene where that thing happened? I'm not sure. And but other than that, I do think that these are sort of, if we look at books of the past, like the history of publishing, these seem like artificial distinctions when you think about it in terms of like what we've all been reading and writing since the dawn of time. So that's an unhelpful answer, but
that's a wonderful answer, and it's true. One of my favorite books is Conjure Wife by Fritz Leiber, which has over the years has been in print, been a mystery novel, been science fiction, been fantasy, been a mainstream comedy about manners at a university, has been in every genre possible. And it is all those genres, and it's also none of them. So I want to hear from Brian, because even worse than publishing is music, with these incredibly narrow micro genres. That's not dungeon synth. That's kobold core. What's wrong with you? So
Yeah, good Lord.
so how do you navigate as a musician who might be also doing some traditional music. How do you navigate genre?
Well, I'm one of those people that tends to like immediately mash them together, which is what a lot of musicians I like also do. Like I'm in one band where the shtick is that we just take music from all over the world and we get the rhythms right and we get some of the standards right, and then we just proceed to like do whatever we're gonna do to it. Um, my feeling about that is usually that the difference between musicians and listeners is can be pretty stark. Like I think most musicians that I've met, like regardless of what they play, tend to listen to anything. Mostly because we're just like little children who just want to hear new things all the time. It's like it's pretty silly. And like meanwhile, there are people who seem to have their identities like super invested in like some specific thing for some specific reason. And it's a strange disconnect sometimes, for people who are like really living something for some deep-seated reason, and like someone like myself who's in some ways just there because they like the way things sound, and like you do your homework and you do your cultural education like you have to do to play it right. But what's the reason that I'm really there is just because I like the way something sounds, and it gets it's it that it remains kind of like a pretty tense thing, without going on and on about it. Like even within sort of the Appalachian scene, there's constant tension between people who are like, we should play it the way that we did a long time ago, and people who are like, well, it is 2025 and we can't all pretend we've never heard hip hop. It's we live in the world, and the tradition itself has in many ways grown with that. Like it's about 350 years old and counting, and it's not really going anywhere at this point. And yeah, it's always incorporated the popular music that comes and goes, from jazz to country to bluegrass to rock to hip hop now. It's like, and so you get to, it's fun to be a part of that conversation for sure. Though I was sort of maybe born on one side of it before I even knew it. You know.
Sure. All right. Thanks so much. I think we got time for one last question, and we've got one last question. It's like I'm good at this. We're just going in alphabetical order. This is a writing advice question, which has, like most questions, an unstated assumption in it. How do I start my story with a bang? It is always so slow. So up I go. That's Selena first. We're doing by a surname. So Chambers.
So if I'm understanding the question right, they want to make their introduction more zippy.
That's what it seems to say. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So for my personal process, I never start with the beginning. I usually end up doing a lot of drafts, and a lot of the pacing's very, very tedious until, I finally get to the final bit, know what's the end. I'm able to kind of cut to where the beginning is, and get rid of all the chaff. So my advice would just be revise, revise, revise.
All right. Excellent advice. Cudmore.
Start with action. Start with them doing something, and don't have it be waking up.
Yeah.
And definitely not putting on your socks on page 2 and getting the toast on page 3. As an editor who read a lot of slush over the years,
Yes.
I've seen more people get toast from their spouses in fiction than I've ever seen in real life. I don't believe anybody gets a piece of toast from their spouse in the morning anymore, but it's still omnipresent in fiction.
Yes. Just get right down to it. Don't explain. Just drop us. Let us parachute in.
Marano.
I always try to start in medias res. I'm a voyeur. I spend all my time in coffee shops working, and I'm always listening to conversations. Oh, that sounds interesting. So I always try to start in the middle, and just give the sense that we're dropped in the middle of something. I always found that a mediocre movie becomes really interesting if, when you're flipping around in late night cable, you come in the middle. I always found that to be the case. So it's and Star Wars, of course, begins with a intergalactic dogfight. It begins with the stockade runner. I always try to start in the middle. Well, at the same time, I've got a real problem with a lot of things happening nowadays with things starting too goddamn zippy. A lot of publishers and agents say, just send me the first 5 pages. What happens to the first 5 pages of Lord of the Rings? What happens to the first 5 pages of Dune? What happens to the first 5 pages of Harry Potter or Narnia? Particularly in fantasy, and this is true in a lot of the things that I'm reading and pulling out of the library. Um, no one's building the reality for the fantasy to intrude upon. Um, when I was a youngling, like I would pick up a Tanith Lee novel and it would begin, she was cleaning out the stables when the ghost of her grandmother came to her. Now it's, she was practicing her shapeshifting spells in the highest tower of the Crystal Palace when the ghost of her grandmother came to her. And it's like, there's so much fantasy, I can't get a toehold. So, in terms of being zippy, I think you can be too zippy. You can be too genre centric right at the beginning, and just look at a classic Twilight Zone episode. The genius is the reality that the fantasy intrudes upon. If Stephen King never wrote anything about a ghost or a goblin, he'd still be one of the most important writers who ever lived because he's such a brilliant realist. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
In grad school, just briefly before we go on to Ridler, in grad school, they made us read Salem's Lot, and everybody was really upset. Like, I'd not come to get in my fate to read Stephen King. Ah! And then they started reading it, and they were like, wow, this is really a literary book. Because, of course, for the first 100 pages, it's just a small town with Stephen King, but hot, kind of wandering around, meeting everybody. And then the vampire shows up and kills the dog and all this stuff. So the first 100 pages, they were so thrilled. Like, oh, it's so literary. It's just a small town, these epigraphs. Then they got very upset at page 100, where it's absolutely the case that he is I think you told me this once, and I stole it and act like I made it up. He knows what the boomers are thinking. Stephen King does. So he has that boomer reality, that baby boomer reality that is so compelling for so many readers because of that.
It sounds like something I said, but I say a lot of things. I'm a cultural critic. I get paid to mouth off. But yeah, I mean, I go to the library and I open up genre novels, and there's too much fantasy. There's too much right from the start. And I just go, it feels like you're writing for the algorithm, that you're not writing for the reader.
Well, never writes for the algorithm. Jason Ridler.
Don't even know what it is. So I think there's two pieces of advice I'd give, and I don't know if they're contradictory, but one came from Tom Piccarelli, the great late Tom Piccarelli, in Welcome to Hell, this little Be a Writer book. And it was, when all else fails, start by describing something in great detail that's vile and disgusting. And at the very least, you've done a couple of things. You've set place, senses are engaged. You're trying to create this world of the moment in the head of the reader. And I was like, I never do that, but I'm going to try. And it's actually not a bad way. You may not keep that beginning, but I find if it's vile enough, you've got people's attention. Also, for me, it's dialogue. If you start with quotation marks, people are like, what are they saying? It's candy for the eye. Now, if you're actually any good at it, you can do it well. Plays do it very well. The first line of dialogue that makes you want to go, holy crap, what's happening? Like Copenhagen, which is a very, very good play, which has this very annoying line, but why is he coming? Okay, who is he? I have tons of questions that need to be answered by what? Me reading the rest of this. So there you go.
And Brian.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like, you can start your story however you want, right? But like, because the person is asking, I'd say, I'd say like I like to pick the most tense moment whatever that is. It's not necessarily action.
Oh no, the
Uh-oh.
action has come. Brian Slattery's been killed.
Oh
Molly
no.
Tanzer, what's your
We'll
answer?
never know.
That was
We'll never
suspense
know.
right there.
Yes.
The algorithm got him.
He did.
He'll be back.
I guess
There he is.
oh, you're back.
Okay. What was I saying? Oh yeah. Like start with the most tense moment, whatever the thing is that's sort of like the tightest. It's almost like it's a little bit of it's a little bit of like the journalism formula, right? You pick the thing that hooks and then you sort of step back and explain what's going on. But that's in some ways that's about it. But also like, start your story however you want. Try different ways to do it and see which way you like the best.
Thanks. Are you okay, by the way?
Am I okay?
Yes,
What?
everything-
It's a complicated question.
Okay, all right. All right, Molly, what'd you think?
I would say, and this is sort of a cheat answer, but I think the only way to do it is to read widely. That's going to be the answer, is seeing how people have done it before. I also think this is a fraught question because the answer for me is very different if I'm writing a short story, a novelette, a novella, a novel. I would say with a novel, looking at just sort of like write the best sentence that you can, which is the worst advice anyone could possibly give. But when you think about great novel openings, then it is usually someone wrote a sentence that then draws you in for however much then sort of build up that you get until you hit like the pace. But with short stories, oftentimes these days, especially, like you do kind of want to start in the middle of things. You want it to be quick. You have a sort of a word limit. So I think it's a really I think this is a question that can only be determined by the story itself as well. And I'm not trying to give like a vibes answer. I just think that experience is a good teacher, whether that experience is writing whatever you're trying to write and failing and then writing and failing and then writing and sort of succeeding and doing better every time. And also then reading widely and the genre or the mode that you're most interested in, seeing how other people do it. At least that's how I did it, but no one's ever been like, Molly Tanzer can really write an opening. So if everyone's
That is not
free
the
to,
case. People are like that.
that is not what anyone has ever said. Do not listen to this man. But
That's true.
but I don't know. So I guess that's my cheat answer.
And Professor Terry, help us.
Yeah, Molly Tanzer can really write an opening. I like the idea of dialogue, the Fletch novels that they base the Chevy Chase movies on. They're very dialogue heavy. And another thing that helps with the tension in those is that he's oppositional. So he's always talking back, no matter what is said. But personally, I think I want you to remember when you write that whatever you're putting in the Google Doc doesn't automatically, unfortunately, end up on the shelf at Barnes & Noble in that state. You got time to revise. And sometimes those first couple paragraphs, scenes, pages, even chapters are things that you're writing for you before you get to that bang that really starts off the story. And maybe that info is just you, the stuff before the bang is you gathering information and getting to know your story so that you can share it best. And so I say copy paste that into another document and save it for the boxed set or the extended remix or something that is bound to come when your story comes out and everyone loves it.
The demos.
Yeah, the demos. There we go.
I had just gone to a reading with Lucy Foley, and she described what you just described, Chris, as scaffolding. Don't be afraid to build up your scaffolding.
That's
And
good.
I thought that was a very good visualization of that.
I've heard throat clearing as well.
Ooh.
But yeah, it comes. And I'm kind of echoing Selena here. Like it comes from, it's your last draft. Your first draft isn't the last one.
I definitely, as a teacher, often write on the side of page 2 or 3. Here's the first paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Restarts here. Yeah.
But I will also make one suggestion that maybe stories don't have to start with a bang all the time. What they have to do all the time is tantalize the reader, which is slightly different than hooking the reader. And I'm always a little wary of being talked about when people say hook or bang, because I've seen a lot of stories in the slush piles that solve the problem of waking up and eating toast and putting on your socks by having something amazing up front, because I'm going, fuck, and then waking up. Or something a massive explosion and the TV gets turned off. And then they say, oh, well, here's my toast. Now we can get the important waking up eating your toast type of thing. While a powerful sense of dialogue or something that sets the stage or even direct address to the reader, especially if it's in the first person, I'm telling you this story, so you know there's an ending to it. And the same way we have all our conversations can be really compelling ways to tantalize. And sometimes I think tantalizing, of which a bang or a hook is a subset, might be the best way of conceptualizing writing.
Sounds like if somebody's eating toast, though, they're doing it wrong, right? It's the
Yeah, like no
it
toast.
depends. It depends. What goes on
depends on the toast. Depends on the
All
toast.
on your
Yeah,
pan,
fair
that's
enough.
what the
Depends on the
possibility is
toast.
there. That's right. With the toast about to go to my mouth, and then guy walks into the diner with a gun pointing at my head. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Alrighty, I think that's pretty much it. We did about an hour. That's a lot of time. Speaking of tantalizing, I want to tantalize people who are watching this to pick up a copy, if you're not already, of 120 Murders. And because we're not sellouts, I'm going to tell you not to buy from Amazon.com, but anywhere else on earth. Especially the Ruadán Books website, because I'm also self-interested. And we get twice the royalties if you buy direct. But I'm also other interested, so I'm going to give you a little bit of advice. If you want to buy the ebook, go to waitlistbooks.com. That is books without weight, waitlistbooks.com, because you actually get to own the book. It is yours. It is not Jeff Bezos licensing it to you, or Waterstone's Barnes & Noble licensing it to you so they can take it away at any time. It is yours to keep and spread and share and make other copies of. So that's my recommendation to you out there in internet land. Buy our book from either Ruadán Books or Waitlist Books. So thank you so much for coming, everybody. Any last
Thank
words?
you.
Thank you.
Other than
It's
the
really nice to meet y'all.
Thank you.
All right,
everyone.
Deborah, get us out of here.